AVC, welcome back. This is HubTunes. I'm Mike. Grab a beer, grab a box of wine, grab a jug of wine, whatever you want to drink. This is going to be a long one. We're going to go down memory lane and kind of reminisce about the 1980s. I don't want this channel to be all new vinyl finds and contest entries and all that. I want to do other stuff. I want to create discussion and showcase albums that were important to me in my life, and so that's what we're doing today. This is gonna be a long one. The 1980s were pretty much my prime growth in my teen years, and it was probably the most formative decade of my life, the Reagan years. As I said in my intro video, I started buying records and cassettes probably in 77, 78, but really didn't get going until about 1980, and then it just flew into that over the years and decades. And so I thought I'd do a video on the 80s, and it was actually kind of fun going through all those records and picking out stuff. And I didn't purposely leave anything out. I also didn't purposely, pick anything out. It was just kind of random, and I got going, and it kind of snowballed into a stack of about 60 albums that I'm probably going to go through. Yeah, it's a lot. So we're going to grab a beer. I'm not going to show you what beer I'm drinking because I don't want to give any free advertisement, and I hope that wasn't, I was doing that before and I may have stopped some of my viewership. I don't know. I'm new to this whole YouTube business. So let's just get right into it. I don't know how many, it's the 1980s. What do you say about the 1980s? A lot of people hated the music from the 1980s. A lot of people loved the music from the 1980s. I'm kind of on the fence. There's a lot of garbage from the 1980s. I just watched the Tina Turner documentary last night. I think it's just called Tina, which I found really sad. She doesn't seem like a happy person, even after the comeback and everything. It just kind of, I left it feeling really bad for her. But man, some of that 80s stuff that she made was garbage. I just overproduced, and that was kind of the theme of the 80s, was that overproduced production. And you had just, producers like Phil Collins just hyping up all these artists, although I do love the Frida album that Phil Collins produced. It's a pop masterpiece. But man, he ruined a lot of artists. I mean, Eric Clapton made some of the worst albums of his career under the guise of Phil Collins. But that's another video, and I will make that video. So let's just dig in and have fun and reminisce about the 80s and music that I collected in the 80s. A lot of these albums are originals that I bought back then. Some are reissues, just because I needed to upgrade, because there was a lot of partying and there was a lot of playing of these albums. I mean, I played everything. Even when CDs came around, I did gravitate towards the CD genre, when that all came out. But I kept my albums and I kept playing them. That's just the way that's just the way I rolled in the 80s. I also I couldn't really afford a CD player, so I just kept with my albums. Why change, Eventually I did, towards the later 80s and 90s. Well, enough of this, I don't know. I could go on and on and on about the 80s, and I probably will. We're already at 14 minutes and I haven't showed a single fucking album. Okay, well, I didn't put these in any order. It's all just random, and brought back some memories going through some of this stuff. So let's do it. This one obviously came at the beginning of the 80s, and it was, for a Beatles fan in 1980, it was, God, the anticipation, it's indescribable. I was a Beatles fanatic in 1980, and all I could do was hope and wait for more music from John Lennon. And we got this, basically half an album. And it's good. I mean, the singles are absolutely fantastic. Woman and Starting Over and Watching the Wheels and Losing You. I mean, it's the John Lennon songs that are on this are absolutely wonderful. So, and obviously, Tragedy hit shortly after it was released. But what a way to kick off the fucking 80s with a new John Lennon album. It was, as a kid in junior high, I was just so excited, absolutely excited. And of course, we hoped for a tour, and anyway. But yeah, I mean, Double Fantasy, fantastic. I gotta keep these in order when I'm trying to reorganize and putting all this shit back on the shelves after I'm done with you. Another album from the 80s that I absolutely adore. I think I showed this in my International Women's Month video. This is Concrete Blonde's Bloodletting. Their best, one of my favorite albums of the 80s. Johnette Napolitano on lead vocals is quite the character. She is an amazing vocalist. She's just terrific. If I don't know if she's ever going to tour again, she's kind of like in that Grace Slick crowd where she's a little bitter towards the industry, and she's just kind of a little bitter about everything. And I don't know, hopefully we'll get another tour. She might do a solo thing, who knows? Who knows what the pandemic has done to people's minds, and maybe she will get the courage to go back out on the road. I've seen her 4 or 5 times with Concrete Blonde, and I've seen her 3 or 4 times solo, just with a band. I saw her with just her and a piano. Gorgeous woman and terrific vocalist. So yeah, Concrete Blonde, Bloodletting. That's my. Well, these aren't in order, so I'm not gonna. But this is number 2. And I'm not gonna talk about every single record, or we're gonna be here. I mean, we're already at 7 minutes. Yeah. Okay. My favorite album from the Talking Heads during the 80s. This is Remain in Light. Obviously, Speaking in Tongues is probably a close second. I could go with either one of those as far as the 80s for the Talking Heads goes. Awesome album. I mean, great album. I probably shouldn't. Yeah, I'm not going to start naming off songs and stuff, but I mean, most people know this album, the Talking Heads. Terrific album. One of my favorite albums. When this came out, I just was blown away. This is The Hurting by Tears for Fears. This is their first album. This before the big one, the Songs in the Big Chair was obviously the huge album. This has a song called The Changing. I love this. If you were to give me a choice between Songs from the Big Chair, is that what it's called? I think it's what it's called. And this, I'm taking The Hurting every single time. This is a wonderful album. Not a lot of hits on it. It had The Hurting. Oh, it had Mad World, yeah, which was big. But oh my God, Change. The song Change is just fantastic. This is a terrific album. God, I'm going to be shaking my head a lot because the 80s did have as much garbage as that came out in the 80s. There was a lot of really good stuff. But by the way, you're not going to see anything from Genesis in the 80s on this video. You're not going to see Culture Club. And they have their place and they have their thing. We'll get into we'll do a Genesis video, I promise. At some point I'm going to do a Genesis video. It's going to be interesting. I mean, I could probably put Abacab on this video. I think Abacab had a really cool sound. Overproduced, but it kind of needed it. It was a good album. but really downhill from the rest of the way. So there's not going to be any Genesis on this. No Culture Club, like I said. I'm not going to do Michael Jackson. I'm not even doing the Police. I like the Police. I like the 70s Police. I mean, I should shut up and just show records because we're going to be here all fucking day. Yeah, I mean, what do you... Great album. I could have shown Time Bomb too, which is also terrific. But I did Soul Mining. Probably maybe because it was the more popular album at the time. I recently got to see Matt, and it's a rotating cast of band members at this point. I don't think it's all the originals. There may be a couple, but I think it's always been just kind of Matt and other people. I saw them probably about 3 or 4 months before lockdown, and they did a 10, maybe like a 10 or 12 shows in the US right before the lockdown, and they were fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I was just head over heels. It was wonderful. My partner hated them, absolutely hated them. I don't know why. He's a little younger than me. I mean, he doesn't know this album, but he'll always go to shows with me and stuff. And he went to the bathroom like 4 times. He went to get a drink 3 or 4 times. He went outside to smoke 2 or 3 times. And I was like, he missed the whole show. We walked out, and he's like, I hated that. I was like, well, that's fine. And he's a trooper. He'll go to any show with me that I drag him to. And I'll go to anything that he drags me to. But yeah, really good show, and it brought back a lot of memories. And then Matt got really ill right after the tour. He got really ill. He was in the hospital for, I want to say, two months, or it was a really long time. And I think it was affecting his throat, whatever he had. He had to have a lot of surgery, so we may never see the tour again. I mean, we were just very lucky to get those 12 dates last year. One of my favorite bands of all time, the Boomtown Rats. This is Mondo Bongo. Not my favorite Boomtown Rats album. Most of their stuff that I absolutely adore is in the 70s, but this came out in 80 or 81, I believe. And it's the Boomtown Rats, you know. I mean, it's great. It's good stuff. It's got Elvin's Graveyard, Please Don't Go. It doesn't have any of the big hits, but good stuff, really good stuff. And then of course he would go on to do the film The Wall, and he released a solo album, which actually is in the pile. Bob Geldof, just a terrific singer. They released an album last year in the middle of pandemic. I think it was in the middle, or right at the beginning. They released an album last year. I mean, what's it been, 18 years since they released an album? And it's really, really good. I highly recommend. It's called Citizens of Boomtown. And it came out, no fanfare, the pandemic hit. They didn't tour. I don't even think they toured the US or the UK. I mean, there was nothing. There was no promotion on the album whatsoever. But check it out. It's a really, really good album. I highly recommend that. There was a really cool vinyl release on gold vinyl. I'm not a huge color vinyl. I don't have to have color vinyl, but it was really sharp. I have it. I'll show it in a video one day. But a terrific album by the Boomtown Rats. It's called... I'm pretty sure it's called Citizens of Boomtown. And I'm telling you, nobody knows this album came out because, you know, shit hit the fan right after it was released. I should have brought 2 beers in because I'm going to need it. This was a band from the 80s. This is not their best album, but I like this album. I think, I don't remember the name of the big hit. I think it might have just been called Big Country, but this is the one that came right after it. This is Steel Town. cool band. Really cool band, and I don't think they get enough credit. They had the big album, Big Country, the blue covered one. I think it might just be called Big Country because the single was Big Country, and which is a wonderful album. I don't have that for some reason. I don't have that. May have had it on CD at one point, but this was the follow up, I believe, and it's a really good album. Band that does not get enough credit in the '80s. Absolutely not. And the lead singer has since passed away, but I think they still tour, but they don't have the lead singer. I'm not sure. What's this? Oh, Chameleons UK. First of all, great album cover. Just wonderful artwork. I love this. Strange Times. Really, really good album. This is the one I pulled. I could have done one or two of the others, but this is the one I like the most. I also got to see him. I'm pretty sure he's the only, the lead singer is the only member still in the band. So I'm about maybe 3 years ago, and it was a wonderful show, but nobody was there. It was like me and 70 other people, which I'm not complaining, but it was a little disappointing. You couldn't get a good vibe on the show, but they played well and they played all their songs. Chameleons UK, Strange Times. Look at that. That's great. I'm gonna go at every album because every one of these brings back memories. This is The Creatures. Hail. This is obviously Susie from Susie and the Banshees. This is my favorite Creatures album. This might even be my favorite anything that Susie ever did from the Banshees. I just love this album. It's very tribal. It's got a lot of drums, a lot of congas, very reminiscent of the Peter Gabriel era of like Security, and even so a little bit. This is a wonderful album, and this was a reissue from. It's a double vinyl. I've had this a while. This is a reissue from maybe 8 or 9 years ago. But if you guys don't know the Creatures and you like Susie and the Banshees, I highly recommend this album. I would start with this. They have other great stuff, but this is my favorite. And this is Hail. The Creatures. Okay. This is a huge album. We're going to move this along. This is a huge album. Grammy Award-winning album. Tracy Chapman. I prefer her second album a little bit better. But this was the big one. I mean, this was everywhere. I mean, Fast Car, and I mean, this was a huge album. I mean, I'm not going to read off all the songs because we're moving. But yeah, Tracy Chapman, Grammy winner for Best New Artist. Terrific. I would love to hear new music from her. I really, really would. Old Guy Does Good in the 80s. Eric Clapton, Another Ticket. I Can't Stand It is on here. Rita May. It's not, I mean, is it Black Rose, Another Ticket. I Can't Stand It. Catch Me If You Can. Is it classic Clapton? No. Is it his best? No. But I still throw it on every once in a while. This era of Clapton, this and Backless, and the one that Dylan did a bunch of songs on with him, One in the Crowd or something, I forget what it's called. This era gets overlooked, and I think there was some really, really good stuff on there, and so if you guys get a chance, revisit that era. Oh, the one with Promises, is that Backless? I think that's Backless. Backless is a wonderful album. Always been one of my favorite Eric Clapton albums, and when it came out, it was just kind of like Eric Clapton doing soft rock. These albums are really good. He became a really good songwriter, and still, was a fantastic guitarist. I think this album gets overlooked. I am a huge Clash fan. And I mean, London Calling, if you guys have seen my other videos, London Calling is my favorite album of all time. All time. And I think this album gets overlooked because the first album was a punk masterpiece. The second album was solid as can be. London Calling is one of the greatest albums of all time, and Sandinista was an epic. Whether you like it or dislike it, I know people go either way. You could have pared it down and made it a double album. You could have made it a really good single album. I enjoy it. I absolutely adore it. But I think this gets left out. I think this is underrated. This is the Clash, Combat Rock. I think people dismiss it because it had their two biggest hits of all time on it with Rock the Casbah and Should I Stay or Should I Go. It was a huge album, and it is really, really good. If you dig deep on this album, you get past the two hits. I mean, Adam Tan and, oh my God, Straight to Hell, Overpowered by Funk, Ghetto Defendant. This album is absolutely fantastic. And like I said, I think people just overlook this in the Clash discography. And, maybe rightly so. I mean, it's a pretty good discography. How you guys doing? Okay. Oh, we're buckle up. We got a ways to go. This is gonna be my longest video by far. Okay. This band made a lot of music. My favorite stuff is probably in their first album in 1979, so I couldn't put that in this because it's a 1980s video. But The Cure, Disintegration. I could have done Pornography. That's fantastic too. This is the reissue from a couple years ago. It sounds phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Probably, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's always been hard for me to figure out what my favorite Cure album is. I guess it depends on my mood. It absolutely depends on my mood. I love the first album because I love the pure rawness of it. But then this is like a different band. You get into the produce, I don't want to say overproduced because I think these albums like this and Pornography were perfectly produced for the time. Yeah, I mean, this has Lullaby, Pictures of You. Oh my God. Yeah, no, this is Fascination Street. I've seen them. You'll get a lot of these anecdotes where I've seen so-and-so, or I've seen this, I saw them. They did a tour about 8 years ago. They played at a tiny place here at the UIC Pavilion, which is basically a basketball stadium. But at the time, they they don't do indoor shows. They basically just do festivals and stuff at this point. And they did the show indoors, and as soon as I saw that they were playing indoors, I was like, I gotta go. I mean, I've never seen the Cure indoors. I'm not a big outdoor festival person. I'll go to them, but I prefer indoor shows. So I went alone. That's right. And they played for 3.5 hours. And it was that tour they were doing where they just did rarities and B-sides, and then they did like 8 or 10 songs for encores that were hits. So the whole show was rarities and B-sides, and then the encore was like 10 hits. And it was mind-blowing. It was absolutely mind-blowing. A band called the Twilight Sad opened for them, and they were great. But man, I was wiped out. I mean, I was in this basketball stadium sitting on these horrible seats for, it felt like forever. But it was well worth it. It was one of my favorite concerts of all time. It was really, really cool. We'll start buzzing through these. This is Joan Armour Trading. Wonderful album. Walk Under the Ladders. Joan was groovy. I liked Joan. I don't think Joan gets enough credit. She's hard to describe. Singer-songwriter, kind of. But I loved this album and the one that came right after it. But we're moving on. But no, now it sounds like I'm slighting Joan Armour Trading. Joan Armour Trading is fucking awesome. Give her a listen if you don't know her. Most of their albums came out in the 70s, and they were one of my favorite bands. This came out in 1980? Maybe 81. Probably 80. This is Squeeze, East Side Story. You cannot go wrong with any Squeeze album before 1982. Cool for Cats, Argy Bargy, East Side Story. This is their wheelhouse. They are at the peak of their game. Chris Dilford and Glenn Tilbrook, probably some of the greatest pop songwriters of all time. And this album is, I mean, it's fantastic. This is the one that had Tempted on it, In Quintessence, Someone Else's Heart, Heaven, There's No Tomorrow, Is That Love? I mean, just one of the great bands of all time. I can't talk enough about this band. If I was doing a 70s video, they'd probably have 3 or 4 albums in that. Oh, maybe I should do a 70s video. But if I was doing a 70s video, Squeeze would be dominating it. Pete Shelley, Homo Sapien. Pete Shelley, the lead singer of the Buzzcocks, went solo and made some solid albums. They were not punk, but I never really considered the Buzzcocks punk. I always scoff when people put them in the punk genre. They're new wave rock, but this was a big, well, it wasn't a big album, but I love this record. Absolutely love this record. It's got the title track Homo Sapien, and it's a wonderful record. So Pete Shelley, rest in peace. Just passed away a few years ago. No one will know this. This is the 77s. Cool punk rock. Yeah, they're punk rock. Maybe a little leaning towards the power pop. But yeah, the 77s. Check them out. Really cool. This is called All Fall Down. They didn't have many albums. Maybe 2. I don't. Maybe 2 or 3. But this is the one that caught my ear back in 1980. I'm not going to try and read the date. Probably, I'm going to say 82. Probably 82. How are we doing? It's my video. I can take as long as I damn well want. But then again, nobody could be watching. I could be just talking into a vacuum. Marshall Crenshaw. This, I don't know. He had a few albums. But is this the one that had the big hit? I think it is. Yeah, Whenever You're on My mind. Yep. Actually, I don't think this is the one that had the big song. One day, I'm not going to sing. But yeah, Marshall Crenshaw was really cool. And he had a couple of good albums in the early 80s. One of my second favorite album of all time. Right behind London Calling is The Pretenders' debut. What do you say about this? This is, I mean, it's Chrissie Hynde. It's absolute pure joy. This album is everything what a rock album should sound like. It's terrific. And this is Mo-Fi, and it sounds amazing. And they would do another album after this, and then have Pete Farndon and James Honeyman Scott would pass away. and she was left with Martin Chambers, and it's been a rotating cast of characters in the band since then. And I think she's really held it together. I'm really impressed with what she's done. James Honeyman Scott was a really, really good guitarist, and he showed so much promise. And this band, when this album came out, everyone was just like, this is the future. But tragedy did hit them. And I think Chrissy's done a really good job of holding shit together and making some quality music. She's still one of my favorite female vocalists of all time. So yeah, The Pretenders debut album. This one, Psychedelic Furs. This is what I think their third album, but this is the one that really hit big. This is Forever Now, and then of course, Pretty in Pink, the single, was on the soundtrack of the movie, and that just they exploded. One of my favorite 80s bands. I think they get a little underrated. I don't know. But what a terrific album. I mean, this has Forever Now, Love My Way, Sleep Comes Down, President Gas is on here. This is definitely one of their best albums. I like all their albums. Honestly, I really do. I could have picked the one right before. I could have picked Mirror Moves, which was the one right after this. And yeah, really, really good band. Rick Butler is terrific. He actually released a solo album. Oh God, it's probably been 15 or 20 years now. But Rick Butler did a solo album that's really, really good. I don't think it's on vinyl. It's probably on CD somewhere. But check that out. It's excellent. And they made an album last year. They released an album. No, it came out, last year. It came out in the middle of pandemic. It's called Made of Rain. And guys, it's really, really good. It's my favorite album from 2020. It is absolutely fantastic. The song, Come All Ye Faithful, is just classic Furs. The whole album is classic Furs, just with it's classic Furs, and somebody just took a brush over it and just said, but it's 2020, and it's great. So I definitely check out. I think I was talking to Steve Carlson. I made a few comments on his page because he had just picked up. I think the album before this. I forget what it's called. And I commented. I said, hey, they have a new album out, and he was blown away. He couldn't believe they had a new album out, and yeah. So definitely check out their new album. It's called Made of Rain. And there's a beautiful purple version of it. Maybe I'll do a 2020. Maybe I'll do a best of 2020 video one of these days, because I missed 2020 because I started my videos in 2021. Yeah, I might do that. But it's a wonderful album, and there's a beautiful purple pressing of it. Okay. I would have to say we're halfway through, so if you guys want to go piss or poop or get another drink, do it now. Well, you can pause. I don't need to tell you that shit. Tom Petty made a lot of albums, and a lot of albums in the 80s, and a lot of albums in the 90s. And I don't think any of them suck. I think they're all really, really good. And the one that doesn't get enough credit, in my mind, is this one. This is Long After Dark. I almost said Long After Midnight. Long After Dark. This is the one that had You Got Lucky on it. I love this album, and I think in his catalog nobody talks about this album. It is, and it's my favorite album. No, it's not my favorite, but of his 80s stuff, this is my favorite Tom Petty album. Absolutely. One Story Town, Long After Dark, We Stand a Chance, Straight Into Darkness, Deliver Me. Yeah, this is a solid album, and I think even Tom Petty fans kind of overlook it. John Lydon made a pretty decent album with Public Image. This is second edition. Some weird artwork. It's a good album. It's a really good album. It's not my favorite Public Image album, but I do like it. I don't play it very often. Maybe I should play it more. Maybe that's the issue. This band is one of the greatest bands of all time. And in the 80s, they made one of the worst albums. I won't say of all time, but one of the worst albums of the 80s. Dirty Work. Rolling Stones. This is hot garbage is what it is. Yeah, there's some good riffs. There's a couple of good songs. What are they wearing? I mean, that sums up the 80s right there. The Rolling Stones. This is the last album that would have Bill Wyman on it. He left after this. I think this cover is probably why. Okay, Charlie doesn't even want to be here. He's just hiding in the corner. I don't know. What's on here? Oh, Harlem Shuffle. So they did a cover. Had It With You. Oh, Too Rude was a decent song. It was kind of that reggae. Is that a Keith song? I think Too Rude was a Keith song. I don't know. Winning Ugly? Fight? I don't know. There's a few good guitar riffs, maybe. This might be the worst album of the 80s. I don't know. Fight me on it. Come on. Bring it on in the comments. If there are fans of Dirty Work in the comments, please. I want to hear your argument why that might be a good album. So we had this. Some say their last great album. I don't consider it their last great album. Some Girls is their last great album. They've done good stuff since. This is just leftover stuff from previous sessions, and it's fucking awesome. So, you know, is it a great fucking album? Yes. Is it their last great album? I don't know. It's leftovers. I'm still gonna go with Some Girls as their last great album. And they have good stuff on every album since. All the way up to whatever, Voodoo Lounge. I don't even know what their last album is. Black and Blue is a fantastic album. Great. Stone's great, because Stone's great is way up there. But man, this has got some good stuff on it. I mean, it's got classic Stones. It's got Start Me Up. It's got Little TNA. It's got Neighbors. It's got Black Limousine. Some really good songs. It's a hell of a lot better than this garbage. And this followed it up. I'm pretty sure Dirty Work was the follow-up to this. There was the live album. There was Still Life in between these two. But I'm pretty sure this would have been the follow-up to this, right? Or was it Undercover? Was it Undercover? I don't know. It doesn't matter because Undercover sucks too. Although Undercover is a whole lot better than fucking Dirty Work. Wow, I'm dropping the F-bombs tonight. Maybe the 80s make me drop F-bombs. I probably learned the F-bomb in the 1980s. That's probably why I'm doing it. Okay, let's move on from the Stones. That was ugly. Lou Reed's best album. I don't care. It's Lou Reed's best album. New York. I love Lou Reed, but this is great, and I just love the story he tells. The story he tells on this album, it's so gritty and dirty and just, it's so Lou Reed. It's a perfect album. It's absolutely a perfect album. And I don't think it gets, when people talk about Lou Reed, I feel they don't ever mention this album. And it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Okay, I can't mention the 80s. I can't mention the 80s without this album. Rush, the early 80s. I was a junior high kid, and this came out, and Tom Sawyer, we danced to Tom Sawyer at school dances. Um, Insane, right? I mean, it was a huge album. Unfortunately, I think the best songs on here were not the hits. I mean, I think Vital Signs and Witch Hunt were probably the best songs on this album, and I think Vital Signs was the B side of the Tom Sawyer single, if I'm not mistaken. And Vital Signs and Witch Hunt are my two favorite songs on this album. But yeah, Rush. I mean, they came into their own, and one of the great album covers of all time. I love this album cover. Fantastic stuff. Okay, now my albums are falling. Ugh. I'm gonna have a huge mess when this is done. I told myself I'm putting everything right back tonight. As soon as this video is over, I'm putting everything back on the shelves. So now I got cats. Hey, how are you? Okay, let's keep going. Oh yeah, this is a doozy. We are rolling. One of my favorite albums of the 80s. One of my favorite artists of the 80s. This is Graham Parker, Mona Lisa's Smile. This is my favorite of his albums. He's really talented, and I think he's still making albums. But this was my favorite. I absolutely love this. I remember I had this on cassette for a while. But yeah, Graham Parker, Mona Lisa's Smile. Terrific artist. Absolutely terrific. This album, as a, gosh, how old was I? Probably 15, 14. When this album came out, I was at the peak of my Led Zeppelin fanatic phase. Led Zeppelin, everything. I wanted to be Jimmy Page. I wanted to see them in concert. Everything was Led Zeppelin in my life. And this album came out. Obviously, I wasn't seeing Led Zeppelin ever again. But this album came out, and I was not one of the people that was disappointed. A lot of people were. I liked it. I was more disappointed with the follow-up, Principle of Moments. I thought that was lackluster at the best. This is a terrific album. I love the song Burning Down One Side. This has Pledge Pin, Moonlight and Samosa. Robbie Blunt, his guitarist at the time, was terrific. An absolutely talented guitarist. And he only stuck with him, I think, for two albums? He was on Principle of Moments. He might have been on the one after that. I kind of lost Robert Plant after the third solo album. I don't know what that was. Was that called Now and Zen? I think that's where I kind of was like, yeah, it's fine. He was losing me. But he's since gained me back, by the way. We'll talk about that in another video. His current work is phenomenal. But when this album came out, I was blown away. Absolutely blown away. And it's a wonderful album. It's on the Swan Song. And then he didn't tour with this album, but he toured with Principle of Moments. I saw him on that tour as a 15, 16-year-old kid. I'm going to see Robert Plant live in concert. I mean, I was blown away, and he had Phil Collins on drums. Phil Collins did not open his mouth. All he did was play drums, which is how I like my Phil Collins. And yeah, I mean, I remember that vividly as a young kid, just one of my first amazing concert experiences. But Pictures at 11, Robert Plant, still underrated, I think, in his catalog. When it came out, people really poo-pooed that album. I think they were just expecting Led Zeppelin, which, looking back on it, why would you? My favorite Pete Townsend album, solo album. This is All the Best Cowboys Have Chinese Eyes. It's got slit skirts, and all the Sea Refuses No River is on here. This is another album that I don't think gets enough credit in his solo. I like Who's Next. It's a great album, and Empty Glass is fantastic. But for some reason, this one is always stuck in my mind, and I love this cover. Absolutely love Terrific album, absolutely terrific. I don't think you can go wrong with any of Pete's solo albums. I prefer Pete's vocals to Roger Daltrey's. I think Roger Daltrey's vocals fit perfectly in The Who, but I've always gravitated towards Pete's songs. I mean, Eminence Front and all his solo albums. I love the Scoop albums. There's a series, I think, of 3, and the first and second ones are fantastic. I mean, they have all these outtakes of Who songs, and some are acoustic, some have bands. I've always liked those albums. Really good stuff. This band was enormous when I was in college. Jesus and Mary Chain. I could have done Psycho Candy, but I went with Darklands. I mean, I was a big Jesus and Mary Chain fan when I was in college. But yeah, right after I graduated high school and moving into college, this was my band. I love these guys. And luckily they reformed, probably now 10 years ago. No, maybe 7 years ago. They reformed and made a new album, which was really good. And they toured with it. They did a tour where they played all of Psycho Candy all the way through. And then they played the new album, a lot of stuff off the new album and a bunch of stuff off of this. And they were terrific. Yeah, really good band. I still absolutely adore this. I think, I heard a rumor they may have some new music on the way, but we'll see. I mean, they're older than me, and I have no desire to make any music, let alone tour. It's a lot of work. But you know what? Paul McCartney does it, so you know what? That's fine. This band, I'm getting messages. There we go. This is a band that was absolutely enormous in the 80s. It's Simple Minds. Obviously, they had one of the biggest hits of the 80s with Don't You Forget About Me from The Breakfast Club. This is Sons and Fascination. Fantastic album. You know what, I was going to say I like their stuff from, I do. I like their early stuff from 1980, even 79 and 78. I love that rawness, that more punky, just kind of like The Cure before they got big. I love that raw punk feeling that this band had. But that being said, I like their new stuff too. I mean, they're still making albums, and they're really, really good. I saw them a couple of years ago. They were fantastic live. It was more of a greatest hits live thing, which, you know, that's fine. You know, when you're seeing a band this old, I get it. But they're still making really good albums. They had an album out like 2 years ago that was really, really good. So yeah, Simple Minds. This is Sons and Fascination. Really good album. Making a dent, people. Susie and the Banshees. This is probably this is my favorite Susie. I don't know. I like the scream. This might not be my favorite Susie. I don't have the scream on vinyl. That's why I'm not showing it. The scream is the one that has that cool ass version of Helter Skelter on it. I don't know. This is good. I like all Susie stuff. This is Susie and the Banshees. So the Grateful Dead made some bad albums in the 80s, but this is not one of them. This is the best Grateful Dead album of the 80s, I think. It's got an absolutely abysmal cover, but this is Go to Heaven. This has Alabama Getaway. This is where Brent Midland came into the band and really kind of showed his force on keyboards and vocals. He's got his 2 best songs ever on here, Far From Me and Easy to Love You. It's a good album. The Grateful Dead are not known for their albums, but this is a rockin' album. This is, Don't Ease Me In, Far From Me, Althea, one of my favorite Grateful Dead songs. Live Grateful Dead songs. It would be Althea. It's got, Same as Circumstance. Feel Like a Stranger's on here too. Yeah. It's a Grateful Dead. Go to Heaven. I'm going to do a Grateful Dead studio album video. I've already got that in the pipeline. So that'll be interesting, I think. I don't know. It might not be. I don't know. Next up is this artist's masterpiece. I adore this album. In fact, you know what? I might put this on when we're done with this video. This is Security, Peter Gabriel, and some people call it Peter Gabriel 4, some people, I don't know. It's called Security. It's on Geffen Records. He moved over. I think he moved over. I think this is his first album on Geffen. This is his Sgt. Pepper in my eyes. This is his masterpiece. It doesn't get any better than this. I think he was at his peak. I know So has some great stuff on it. Don't Give Up is a wonderful song. I like Red Rain. Red Rain is a beautiful song. I don't know, the rest. Oh, Mercy Street is on that. Mercy Street is a gorgeous song. Absolutely gorgeous song. Probably the best song on So. But we're talking about this album. This is The Family in the Fishing Net, San Jacinto, Kiss of Life, and the big single was Shock the Monkey with that incredible video. I saw Peter on this tour, and it was stunning. He had the whole stage set up as a jungle gym, so it was just like bars, and the band was like in the middle of this jungle gym, and he just swung from the bars during every song, and it was really cool. That was the tour that his Plays Live album was recorded, and just I can't say enough about this album. Peter Gabriel, Security. I'm gonna put this one over here because I'm gonna play it when you guys leave. We'll do this. Jerry Garcia made a solo album in 1980, 80 or 81. This is Run for the Roses. It's average. It's not his best solo album. I think his best is his first. I do like Cats Under the Stars is good too. Not his best. It's got Run for the Roses on it. I think he does a cover of I Saw Her Standing There on here. Without Love. Yeah, he does a cover of Valerie. It's Jerry Garcia, not at his best. But the 80s were not good for Jerry Garcia, especially the late 80s. But he tried. Another guy who made a solo album in the 80s was Bob Geldof. The Boomtown Rats split up, and Live Aid was over, and he had nothing else to do, and he made a really solid album. This is a good album. This is Deep in the Heart of Nowhere. It had a couple of good hits on it. Really good album. Really, really good album. I highly recommend it. We're almost done. Okay, here's an album. I don't know how many people remember this. This is The Glove. This is Blue Sunshine. This is a band that the lead singer is Robert Smith from The Cure. And basically the backup band is the Banshees. And he, apparently when they signed their contract for with The Cure to whatever, maybe Warner Brothers? I think Warner Brothers. He had something written into the contract. No, he didn't. They did. That he would not be the lead singer of any band other than The Cure. So he is not credited on here. It's a wonderful album. Is it earth-shattering? No. But it's a really good album. It's got some good stuff on here. So he's not credited on here at all. He does a lot of the lead vocals. He doesn't do them all. But yeah, that's Robert Smith. This is a reissue. It was really hard to find for a while. I think it's on like a weird Blue Marble or something. This came out. They reissued it. I've had this a while. They reissued this maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It says it's Number 847 of 3,500. So, yeah, this is The Glove, Blue Sunshine. I don't know how many people remember this album, but it's really interesting. It's got some good stuff on it. This album, the first album of this band was an absolutely mega hit, but I prefer the second album, and this is Men at Work, Cargo. I like this album better than the debut. Obviously, the debut was a multi-platinum selling album. I like this album. I think Overkill is one of the best songs of the 80s. It's one of my favorite albums of all time, or one of the favorite songs of all time. It's a really, really good album. There's a MoFi release of this, which I would love to get my hands on, because I think Colin Hay is a terrific songwriter. And he's still around. He still does some really cool stuff. I like his solo stuff. He does a lot of acoustic solo stuff. I saw him a couple of years ago, and it was just him and a guitar and telling stories. He probably told too many stories, looking back on it, but he was really good. Some of his solo records are very, very good. So I highly recommend those things. But yeah, Men at Work, Cargo. I love this album. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. One of my favorite bands of the 80s and late 70s. Another one like Simple Minds and The Cure, where I think their best stuff was probably in 78, 79. Even the Talking Heads too. 78, 79 was kind of like my wheelhouse for these bands, but they broke it big with this album. This is Midnight Oil, Diesel and Dust. This was the big one that had Beds Are Burning, and I mean, it was a huge album for them. Terrific album. I prefer their two right before this. They're a little punkier. They're a little raw. But what a great band they were. Too bad they couldn't do more. They did more, but they just, I don't know. I think after this it was a little downhill. Another band that it was a little downhill after. No. This obviously was groundbreaking. Now this is U2 War. This is the first time, we had heard of U2. We had heard, October and Boy. Boy still is probably my favorite U2 album, but this is the one that the masses in the United States got a good taste of what this band was about. Honestly, I this is going to be controversial. I think I'm not going to say it was downhill after this. Unforgettable Fire had some good stuff, and obviously the Joshua Tree was amazingly huge album. But for me personally, this, October, and Boy, they were so raw and so untamed and so innocent. You can't change you can't take away the innocence, and they lost it after this album. Maybe Unforgettable Fire. We'll give them Unforgettable Fire. But yeah, I'm never been a huge fan of this band after this. Are there some songs? Honestly, I don't think I've ever bought an album after this, to be honest. I had Rattle and Hum. That's the one where they did the B.B. King song. I forget what that was. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We won't be doing a video in the future on U2. I can guarantee you that. But what an album. Just a phenomenal album. Great cover. I'm gonna get thumbs down for that, aren't I? That's okay. I like thumbs down. By the way, these are in no order, so we're just finishing up. We got two more. But this is one of, and I didn't put any jazz albums in, except for this, just because it was a really important album in my growing up. This is Pat Metheny and Lyle Mays, So Falls, Wichita Falls. I could have put American Garage in there, but of the two, this is my favorite. American Garage I probably listened to more like when it first came out, that was, I mean, that was the shit. Fuck, Pat Metheny was cool. And then I loved Lyle Mays, who recently just passed away. But this is, I, this was a great album. When this came out, I was kind of like, wow, that's a whole different beast. I've never heard music like that. Terrific album. Terrific album. Guys, we're down to the last album. And by no choice, I don't know why this came up last. And I could also probably grab another 30, but you don't want me to do that because we're already at an hour. And okay, last album of the 80s. One of my favorite American bands of all time. I don't get enough credit. This is Los Lobos. This is By the Light of the Moon, a beautiful Mo-Fi edition. I have most of the Mo-Fis of Los Lobos' releases. I don't think they have one of The Neighborhood, which I would, if they do, I would love to get my hands on. But not my favorite Los Lobos album. It's wonderful. I prefer Kiko and the Lavender Moon and The Neighborhood. I think those two albums back to back were at their peak. You could probably throw this in there too. Just a terrific album. Absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Los Lobos. And that's it. I'm done. Are you guys done? I'm done. If you're still watching, God bless you, because I'm done. Okay. What else is there to say, really? I could probably do another video on 80s. I mean, I really could. I mean, you guys put in the comments what I missed. I mean, I'm not gonna put, there's some stuff I'm just not gonna put on there. I mean, obviously I'm not gonna talk about So. I talked about that earlier. I'm not gonna show the Talking Heads, Little Creatures, or Madonna, or Culture Club. But yeah, there's a lot more I could talk about. But I'm not gonna, not on this video. So, you guys, have a great night. Questions, comments, snide remarks, obviously, all the time in the comment section. Don't forget, you guys, I am still doing my contest, so check back at that video. Make a video. It's a super easy contest. Make a video, post the link in the comments of that video, and I'll do a drawing, and the winner gets a $50 Amazon gift card. Who can't use that? Yeah, and that's about it. You guys, thank you again for all the support. I'm humbled by how fast things are moving along, even though it seems like it's at a snail's pace. But I'm humbled. Thank you very much. Please like, dislike, subscribe, hit the bell, leave comments. I want to talk to you guys. You guys have a great night. Stay safe.